Right, Steve. So episode 15.
Wow, 15.
Yeah. And I wanted to talk this episode. I mean, last episode 14 was
What did we
isolation.
do? I can't even remember now.
Isolation and
Right.
loneliness.
Yeah, okay.
And I just thought we'd look at burdensomeness today.
Yeah.
And I thought the reason we'd look at that is that we often link those two in the sense when we go out and do talks and what things we're looking for in people that are real red flags towards towards mental health and suicidal ideation is isolation, as we discussed in the last episode, triggered by things like grief, relationship breakdown, autistic masking, moving jobs, losing friendship groups, all that sort of thing. And then also burdensomeness. So we talk about that in the context of, but I think a lot of people understand isolation and isolation being a dangerous factor. So when you're isolated, nobody really likes being alone. Yeah. Or, not sort of forcibly alone when you don't want to be alone, not having people around to talk to and everything else. And everybody understands that as a risk factor. And then we talk about burdensomeness. And I said to you earlier, it's kind of clunky word. Yeah. And it's like, well, people, so when we do these talks, we say isolation and then we list all those things. You can see people nodding. Oh, I get that. Or I've experienced that. I could see that. And then you talk about burdensomeness and people are a bit like, what do you mean by that? And so
I was when I first heard it. What do you mean?
Yes.
Well, yeah.
So I thought we could maybe discuss and define what it is,
right? How
it comes about, and how it manifests. In other words, how we see it. And I think people would be surprised about how it comes across. So first of all, burdensomeness, a clunky word, means the feeling of being a burden.
All right.
Essentially. Mm-hmm. So the feeling of being detrimental to other people's well-being.
Yeah.
The feeling of not being a pain in the arse.
Kind of the opposite of meaning.
Yes. I suppose it's the opposite of meaning. Unless you consider your meaning to be a pain in the arse.
Yes. I'm good at that.
Yeah. But just a feeling that you drag everything down. And also I think it's not just a feeling that you drag others down, but I think it's a feeling that
I think there's a few facets to it, I think.
Yes. And I think particularly relevant to people is that feeling that they mess everything up. That somehow they they're generally, if people are coming and people are struggling, they're in a bit of a mess, and it can be for a variety of situations. But it's that feeling that it's their fault and they made a mess of things. Yeah. And not saying it's not. Sometimes people make mistakes, but and you can get into that feeling of, as we've talked about before, the feeling that there's no way out of that. That's a permanent situation. Yeah. Of of things going wrong. And things will just continue to go wrong and you will continue to get them wrong. Yeah. And that's a facet of burdensomeness. But like you say, it's kind of multifaceted. Yeah. And it's a lot more, in depth than it first appears. And even when we talk about it, I think sometimes we almost gloss over it, whereas we go into isolation in a lot more depth. So that's why I wanted to talk about it today. So how would you, when you say multifaceted, how would you see it?
Well, I can only sort of talk from my experience of what I hear people talking about in the burden. So there's a few things that go on, I think, and it depends on what's going on inside someone's head, how they feel about themselves, what voice they've got going on inside their head. But I would say that burdensomeness, even though we're saying it's clunky and that it's the most, I always sometimes say popular. It's not popular, but the most common thing that we hear in that. So people will say, I am a burden in whatever way, but it will be that people would be better off without me. I am such a burden in some way where if I was to remove myself from my family's life or from people's lives, they would be upset at first, but ultimately I would be doing them a favour by removing myself. Their lives would be better if I was not to be in it. So we see that one quite a lot of people kind of having this fear of kind of, I would be doing a good thing if I were to die by suicide, if I was to not be here.
So it'd almost be an act of love in a way.
An act of love, yeah, in a kind of skewed way. It is, that I'm doing someone a favour. And so we see that quite a bit. And also, I think we see burdensomeness in action when, you say, you just don't know what's going on in someone's head. And I think that can be sometimes. I never saw it coming. He looked like he had everything. He was, and sometimes people come and see us, and you could, we all make the mistake of going, oh, okay, well, what's the matter? They might turn up and be like, good-looking young lads with no problem with girl attraction, look like they're on off, like getting money, and you can be like, okay, well, what's going on? And then when they start talking about what's going on in their head, the way they view themselves is completely out of kilter of reality. Of I'm not good enough to be around my friends. I shouldn't be around, and that's a kind of where when someone verbalizes that, you can sort of pick it apart and help people, because people understand, and because what people I think are looking for is a kind of counter argument to that. And if you can't do it in their own head, and for someone to say, no, you're not seeing that right, am I not? And you can have conversations, and people really kind of, we've talked about have a abusive person in their head. Interestingly, a psychotherapist friend would say, it's a good question to ask whose voice they're hearing, but that's a different. And then there's a kind of factor where you have to be realistic, and you say, my family think I'm a burden. You say, well, what's going on? Like, well, I've spent all the money, keeping money on gambling, or I'm always, I'm on ketamine. You use, so there's a reality to how you're being a burden, but there is answers you can do about that. The good news is, there's actions you can go to support, other support services, work on the addiction. So there's all kind of different things, I think, that go on within burdensomeness. Burdensome, that's right, isn't it?
Well, it's interesting as well. I mean, looking at a boxing example, as always, when you said about the perception. So you get somebody who turns up and they look like they are, like you say, they might be young, they might be good looking, they might have got some money, might have a decent relationship, they might have decent social connections, but they, like you say, the voice that's going on inside their head is very different to what you outwardly see.
Yeah.
And it just struck me as obviously I haven't been around boxing and seeing all sorts of people, different people who've had all sorts of different boxing careers, from just having like one fight to having multiple fights, to winning titles, to winning British titles, to winning world titles, etc., etc. And you meet a lot of people who are happy with their career, and it's like, this is how it panned out, and that's all good, and I enjoy boxing, and I enjoyed it. And if we take the late and much missed Ricky Hatton, and I remember hearing Ricky talk about it, and Ricky Hatton won everything. Yeah. So he won as an amateur. He was just an absolute standout. Everybody was like, "You've got to see this kid. Yeah. You've got to see him." And you could see he was on another level. Yeah. And then he came through the pros, and again won everything. Won the British title, won an early world title, then won multiple world titles. Went on to win obviously that dream title against Costa Zoo in Manchester. And then went up a weight to welterweight. Won another title, came down again. But he kind of won everything. Yeah. And not only did he win everything, he was incredibly popular when he did it. Like popular beyond the magnitude in a way of his achievements. It was like, even when he was like, everybody loved him. I remember going to see him fight at York Hall one time when it was very early days for Ricky Hatton. Right, the York Hall was full of Manx. Yeah. So they'd all come down from Manchester to London to watch Ricky fight, and they'd packed out the York Hall. Yeah, great. And it wasn't even, it wasn't even amazing. It was a very early fight in his career. So he was like, and then obviously then he had those fights when he went to Vegas, and he was taking everybody over to Vegas and all that sort of thing. And, so he was just on metrics of boxing success in the ring and outside the ring. He seemed to be an incredible success, and because he was just such a likable person as well as these boxing achievements. But as we know with the story, so Ricky finally got the ultimate fight that he wanted. It wasn't at the ideal weight for him, maybe, but he fought Floyd Mayweather in Vegas, and he got stopped in the later rounds. It was a competitive fight, but he did get stopped by the best undefeated pound for pound fighter in the world. And so then he went away and he thought, I'll rebuild a bit, and he partied with Billy Graham, and he went and got trained by Floyd's father. Yeah, Billy Graham was Ricky's trainer.
The preacher.
For all those glory days, Billy the Preacher Graham. That was his nickname.
Okay.
Yeah, that was his nickname. Okay, yes. Yeah. It was not the Billy.
Oh right,
not Billy the Preacher Graham, but Billy the Preacher Graham.
I know my boxing knowledge is little, but I missed that.
Yeah, no, Billy the Preacher Graham.
Yeah.
No. So trained a lot of great fighters. And then Ricky, he came back and he fought Manny Pacquiao, and he got stopped inside 2 rounds. Had a horrendous first round, got knocked down like 3 times. Went to the second round, got stopped, and that was where he found it. And then he retired after that. Found it very difficult to deal with that. There were a couple of comebacks, but the point was, talking to Ricky, by any metric, he was incredibly successful as a boxer.
Yeah.
Incredibly successful, incredibly gifted, incredibly able,
What a lot of
incredibly
people
dedicated. Sorry?
What a lot of people would dream of.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, who has that career?
Yeah.
Who wins those titles? You know, just absolutely phenomenal. And who has that adulation? But in Ricky's head, he was a failure. He saw himself as a failure because he got stopped by Floyd Mayweather, he got stopped by Manny Pacquiao. We would say to him, those were two of the best to ever do it. Do you know what I mean? You got right to the, the top, well beyond the top 1% of all boxers, well beyond that, but maybe not into the 0.001%. Maybe not into that, the absolute greatness of the Pacquiaos and the Mayweathers. So Ricky saw himself as a failure, and it's like looking at his career, looking at his achievements. How could someone see themselves as a failure? But he did. And so he constantly beat himself up in his head about being a failure, about letting people down. Yeah. So really a case of exactly what we would define as burdensomeness. Yeah. But externally, by any metric and by our definition, you're a massive success. Yeah. In his own head, he's an abject failure who let everyone down.
Well, we see it as well when we've done talks with, some at the school that, the A levels, the pressure, that if they didn't, I'm going for this, I want Cambridge, I'd be thinking, wow, to even be considered for being at Cambridge, like, wow.
Yeah.
It's beyond my, that's not going to
You were going to go to Cambridge once.
Well, I know.
It was a day trip.
I knocked him back.
Yeah, your mum cancelled
it. Begged. Yeah. I'd been naughty. But, so, but there's this kind of, if I don't go to Cambridge, it's a failure.
Yeah.
Like, wow. And we see it, and sports people have nearly made it. I'm like sat there amazed, at what they've achieved, and like, yeah, but I didn't quite make it, so that's expectations we have on ourselves and the pressure and what we tell ourselves is.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I mean I've come across a lot of that with young people, and I find it quite worrying that they basically think, I've got to do these A levels, and to me, I'm afraid probably why I didn't do too well in my life. I did all right, but it was never a massive deal. I was like, I'll get these out of the way and I'm going to do something else, and it's like it wasn't. They were not a lot was hanging on it for me, and I wanted to go and do other stuff. I didn't really want to go to university, and. But I see a lot of young people now who are basically will say, if I don't get these grades in my A levels, my life is effectively over.
Yeah.
They can't see any future beyond that. They can't see any alternative, and it's that's quite frightening.
Oh, definitely frightening. And I think we said, schools aren't the best days. Schools are not the best days of your life. There's a lot more.
No, that's a myth.
Yeah, that's it. But I think, and also because sometimes I think you could look at people and go, right, well, there's a certain type. They're very privileged. You're privileged, you're high achieving, and you come from a good family. But actually, there's a pressure within that. Is people, I've got to do as good as my dad, or even better. And if your dad's a high flyer, that's all right. So anything below that is a failure. People can use that as a kind of way to beat themselves. But the pressure that comes, you need to get your grades, you need to do this, you need to do that. There's a certain standard. That you can, and if you don't meet that, then you can start telling yourself, well, what's the point? If I don't have all this, what's the point in a good? I'm going to have a shit life. And it's not true.
Yeah.
I was talking about with some friends last night about the kind of how we equate, our wealth with being happy. And there was a suggestion of saying, I think there's some countries, I can't remember which one, have a kind of like a happiness index as well as a
Bhutan have got.
Whereas we kind of go, oh, the economy's failing? We're all unhappy. Yeah. Which might, it's going to contribute to it. Don't get me wrong, but there's more.
Well, if you watch the news, it's like it could be called right. Here's a load of stuff to worry about.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, you're all fucked. And so I think that is an added element of what provides a burden.
Well, and it's also the power of that perception in your head, as we talk about Ricky Hatton, or we talk about the A-level students saying their life is over if they don't achieve that. Or all these other things, and the power of that is amazing. And it just reminded me of that Nietzsche quote: "If you think someone's ruined your life, they have."
Okay.
So it's kind of down to you.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like but you can and you can release yourself from that as well.
Yeah. So, and also, like I was told by this, it's like I have clinical supervision, with a psychotherapist. And we're talking, he often says, well, if there's who's the voice people are hearing, if they're getting told they're useless, they're getting where's that voice come from? Whose voice do they say? It can be a parent or a spouse or whatever, and people take it and then they get it into their head and they apply it to themselves, and people start believing. If you've been told you're shit right from the beginning, you're going to believe you're shit. If you've never been praised. Some people have never been fucking praised for anything. You forget about it. You assume, that like if you had parents like mine, oh, well done, or don't do that, do this. That's great. Keep doing that, or well done. Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, you got to look at that. That cake's lovely. All that kind of stuff. You assume, but people then don't get that. I was talking to a friend recently, and he's never had praise. No, he's just been and so where do you learn? So I think not being a burden, you've got to learn how you do that, and it's got to be demonstrated. People have your peers around you have got, or the people responsible for you have got to teach you how. Well done. This is there's levels. Don't let little shits get big heads. That's a different problem. But But we need to be shown, demonstrated how we talk to ourselves in our head, and I'm not saying that's all the cases. I think sometimes people things happen in life and they start to get a bit doubtful, and we've all always got that thought in our head, and in a way sometimes you need it. You need to check yourself that you're not. But some people have never had praise. They don't know how to do it. So if you never had it done to you, how the fuck do you do it? So I think that's always an interesting one. Yeah.
So it's given. Well, I suppose it's do you give yourself encouragement? Where does that encouragement come from? If you've never had it.
Yeah. Where do you learn it from?
And what do you think when people come in and they're expressing burdensomeness? So they're saying that I feel like a failure. I feel like I mess everything up. Maybe I don't see a lot of point in everything as well. I mean, is there any sort of remedies to that, or classic remedy that you can think of?
I think so. All it is, sometimes people need is a gentle nudge to there's that famous, I said really tacky meme, but there's someone on a bus and they're looking out the window at, and they can just see, death or whatever. And if they looked out the other window, they can see all the beauty. So sometimes people just need a gentle nudge to say and talk about what else is going on in their lives, and everyone, so someone might have children, and people, what did you do? So people sometimes, it's just the way they're seeing things, need a chat and someone to sort of say, oh no, well, that sounds good. Because as you're listening to people about their lives, there will be something they've turned it and you say, well, or fucking hell, you've overcome that.
Yeah.
Fuck me, no, that's really tough what you've overcome, have you? So or you
which is in effect praise.
Yes. So you start giving praise, and the boxing, and you don't really know sometimes even know you're doing it, because I was thinking of one guy who's not coming anymore. He's sort of finished with the Cornermen. Is that we were doing pads, and I wasn't thinking of it. I'm chatting to him, so I'm like, oh, nice, yeah, good, well done, yeah, no, you've really come on there. No, I'm not really thinking of it. It's just language I'm using. Yeah. Oh no, you've done that, nice. Oh, and then he said, no one had ever. It was really nice, because no one had ever said, well done, for anything before. So like the little bits of, I wasn't even thinking about it, so I can't take any credit. Just like, oh, good hook, whatever. Yeah. For him, that meant like masses.
Yeah.
Because no one had ever sort of gone, well done. And that's, in a way, it's massively heartbreaking.
Yeah.
That people don't get that. But, so you don't know. It doesn't take a lot, thankfully.
Yeah.
And that's why I really think it's really, really, really important for people to talk, so that you can know what's going on in their head. Because if people are having a viewpoint of themselves which is really out of whack, I think that's where it gets dangerous, because it becomes a belief. I'm useless, I'm this, I'm that, blah, blah, and then that feeds into the cycles we talk about, the other danger areas. But, sometimes let people know. And so that's why I'm sometimes really relieved when people start talking about how this, you think, right.
I mean, it's interesting with that voice of negativity in your head that you talk about, because if somebody actually came up to you and said, you all right, mate, you know what, you're fucking useless. You're a right shower of shit. Everything you do fucks up. Look what you just did then. That was shit. Exactly. You'd be like, fuck off.
Yeah, exactly.
You'd be like, who's this fella?
Yeah.
And you get rid of them.
Yeah.
But when it's in your head,
yes,
you listen to it and you accept it. Yeah, but it's the same principle, really.
Yeah, and I think you have to do the same thing. Fuck off. I'm not, in a way it won't go away on its own.
Yeah.
You have to combat it. You have to argue with it.
Which I thought, going away from it slightly is an interesting thing to talk about responsibility. And something we see in the Cornermen quite a lot is how brilliantly responsible people are for the well-being of other people.
Yeah, oh yes.
And so it's the old classic, if you're worried about someone and then you turn around to them and say, listen, I'm worried about this other fella.
Yeah.
I'm worried he's not going to come. Can you keep an eye on him for me? Can you bring him along to the next group? All that sort of thing. They're like, yep, right, I'm on it. Even though it's them you're worried about, giving them responsibility will make sure they come because they've got a responsibility to make sure someone else comes.
Yeah.
Similarly, when we do the toy bank every year, as it's all the guys in the Cornermen who do all the deliveries.
Yeah.
So, by any sensible evaluation, if you said, look, we do the toy bank, we got 6,000 toys to deliver all over Oxfordshire within a couple of days. So we need people who are right on it and responsible and doing things, and they've got loads of deliveries to do.
Well, it's not going off topic at all. You're not a burden. You're contributing. You're doing meaning. So you've gone from not being a burden to being useful.
I know, but I would say, if you any sensible working out of that, you would say, listen, these guys are dealing with a lot. A lot of them are struggling to look after themselves. The last thing you want to do is put a load more onto them.
Yeah.
In a way, you could say burden them with all these deliveries, all these deadlines, and also the pressure of the fact that these are going to underprivileged children who might not otherwise get any presents.
Yeah.
But it's actually the opposite effect.
Yeah.
The guys just can't get enough of it. I mean, not everybody does it, but the ones that do it are just like, give me. And generally, you're like, look, it's a massive favour. If you could just drop this off, give me some more. Give me a load more presents. Where else do you want it done?
Exactly,
I'll do it. So it's amazing how people do that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's almost like if we could treat yourself as someone you were responsible for, you might be able to silence that voice a little bit.
Yeah. I think that's why it's good that sometimes when we go out and do our talks, we're not teaching people how to look out for it in other people so much.
Yeah.
We're asking people to think about what's going on for them, because it's so hard. With the statistics around people who die, even if they've had a risk assessment. So it's about knowing what's going on for ourselves and recognise it in ourselves is really, really important, because you miss it 9 times out of 10 in someone else because we're good at hiding it. But if you can have a kind of self risk assessment and know, hang on, I'm isolating myself, I'm feeling these voices, I'm becoming a bit reckless, I'm thinking about the fuck it button, and I'm starting to have the feeling that I want to just disappear and not be around, I need to speak to someone. If everyone could sort of know that a bit more, I think that would be a massive kind of, maybe that would bring down the statistics, because you're more self-aware rather than trying to look around in other people, which is really difficult. So but when we go through the we'd use Thomas Joyner's burdensome, I find one that most people go, that's me. That's definitely me. That's the most, I want to keep saying popular. It's not popular. Yeah. People aren't asking for it.
Common.
It's most common. That's the word. Yeah. And then on the flip side, we talk about responsibility, that look, and some people will know where their burdensomeness is because they're struggling with addiction or they're doing a behaviour that is impacting. And the good news about that is something can be done. Not easy, but rather than don't die by suicide to end it, let's take some action. It's going to be hard, but that's where the Cornerman comes in, because you got someone to say, oh, I've fucked up again. Go, well, it's all right. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. And, we've seen that thankfully work sometimes and not work sometimes, where people have come in and they've wanted to die because their ketamine addiction has taken over their lives. It's ruining everything, and they've overcome it, and it's not just been a quick kind of, oh, I decided to do it and it happened. It's been you fucked up. We've had to get back in the saddle. We fucked up. We've had to get back in the saddle. We've had to go and do this. It's taken a journey. Because I think people sometimes just go, "Oh, I've changed now. That's it." And it's it's you've changed direction. Well, let's got to keep going. So that can also be part of a burden, recognizing where the burden is and if there's anything practically you can do about it.
Well, it sounds like really responsibility and meaning is the antidote to burdensomeness.
I would say so.
Yeah.
You think it makes complete sense, doesn't it? You feel your burden. We all want to. None of us want to feel like a burden.
Yeah. Maybe without that responsibility and meaning we do. I mean, it's funny, sometimes you need to define something in opposition to something else, or it helps you see what it is.
Yeah.
So I suppose really from that talk, you would say responsibility and meaning
Are the antidote.
are the antidote and the opposite of burdensomeness.
Yeah.
Well, now we've done that.
Yeah, that's
now we've
right.
worked out what it is. I suppose we'll call it a day on that one.
Yeah, that was a nice. Yeah.
And we'll be back for episode 16 next month.
Wow, brilliant. All right, cheers, Marky.
Yeah, cheers, Steve. Cheers, Marky.
Cheers.